After a 15-hour flight from Toronto to Hong Kong, a 7-hour layover, and another 5-hour flight from Hong Kong to Beijing, I am finally now in Sony. My goal for this summer is to work on my portfolio, expand my artistic taste, and also improve myself. If you're thinking of applying to any art programs soon, you'll know the craziness of preparing a portfolio. Someone told me that they did theirs in a week and regretted it, so I'm gonna learn from their mistakes. I will be applying to universities this winter, so I want to basically finish all of my art pieces so I can work on film applications during the fall. Also, I'm trying something a little different for this video. I was more focused on creating the pieces and putting my energy into the creative process, so it's a little less cinematic and more of a documentation of my thought process. Also, I realized that I haven't made any videos in a long time, but that's because China blocks me from using YouTube. I've also been doing a lot of things, so it's been hard to adjust and kind of create a steady schedule. I do have lots of things planned that I think are really fun, so. Okay, this is my parents' friend's studio, which I'll be invading for a few weeks. Don't worry, I'm using my own materials. I spent the last week kind of on vacation and just walking around and socializing and eating lots of food. Now I gotta lock in. For my first piece, I started pretty simple, nothing too crazy, just using a picture as a reference. I did the sketch at home, and I wanted to focus on the different color changes that are in a single area. Not really doing much with textures or creativity right now, but we'll get to that. I think what really worked for this piece was the colors and the contrast between gray areas and more saturated areas, especially in the lighter parts. However, I just feel like this lacks shape, details, or creativity, and it's really difficult to tell what this even is without knowing the title. The material I'm using is water mixable oil paint, and I've only been using it for a few months now, so there are aspects of it that are a bit more difficult to control. A few things I noticed is that it dries really quick if you add a lot of water, so if you want to make the paint a little less thick, it'll be harder to blend the colors later, at least for the brand I'm using. I'm still figuring it out as I go, but it's fun to deal with something new and a little unpredictable. Here is the completed painting. I kind of wanted to play on the idea of the half full and half empty glass, and how the world is distorted when you view it through a certain mindset. You can only see shapes and shadows, but you can't really tell what it is. I also thought the picture itself just looked really interesting, so you never know if the idea or the meaning came first. An important part of the creative process is learning from each piece. So for the second one, I'm going to approach it a little different. For this one, I learned a new technique from the guy whose studio we're borrowing. Here are some of his work. I know it's crazy, but what he does is use Photoshop to make his ideas into a reference photo and then paint it. He also does really amazing background and creates a clear setting for each piece. This piece is inspired by him a little bit, except it's definitely more my style, if I even have one. This idea actually started a year ago when I did this sketch. I thought it looked really interesting and accurately represented my overthinking and boredom in class. I wanted to paint someone sitting down like they're listening and writing a bunch of notes beside them, and put contrast between the order of the position and the chaos of the text. Inspired by this guy, I thought having a space or setting for the background would be more interesting to the eye. I started by taking a photo of the studio because I thought it looked pretty nice. I modeled because I literally could not find any images of the pose I was looking for. Da primeira vez que eu te
te vi, menina, meu coração.
For this piece, I'm focusing on adding more details. I feel like my signature at this point is the random colors in a single area. Anyways, this one took a lot more brain power and I got distracted a lot. As I painted, I felt like the light and dark contrast was clear, but it still felt really flat somehow. It was looking a lot like acrylic paint, but I do feel pretty good about the details and the color palette. Something really important that people have told me is to not follow the reference photo exactly. I often change up the colors or at least make them a little more dynamic. Or maybe I'm just bad at getting the right colors.
Da primeira vez que eu te vi, menina, meu coração pulou pra boca. Corpão assim não se vê nem na revista.
This one took 3 days or around 20 hours. I like the purple and orange situation and the details, especially on the exit sign. I think it's lacking in paint thickness and creativity. I also didn't add the text yet, but I'll probably do it when I get back on a piece of glass so it can be on or off, and it'll kind of look like this. It also feels a little restrained, which might be good for this one, but I want to be a little more abstract. While I was painting, I looked at art by Cao Li. His art is giving nightmare plus children's art plus schizophrenia plus amazing Central China Art Academy skills. I may not have the skills or, thankfully, schizophrenia, but I count as a child and I occasionally have nightmares and I have a really random brain, so it should be okay. I also took inspirations from other artists while I was at 798, which is basically like the Disneyland for art in Beijing. It was interesting to see how people can combine science and sound with art, making something completely useless except for evoking certain emotions. Some people also have very unconventional methods that somehow still look good. Art is really, really subjective, and you just need to kind of relax and express what you want. I also took a lot of inspiration from Xia Xiaowan, who is Cao Li's classmate. His studio is actually right below us, and he saw my painting, which is crazy. His art literally needs no words. But yeah, I want to freely paint what I want and get more into the details. I decided to use Photoshop again and go deeper into it. No, I don't know how to use Photoshop, but I know how to put a few images together. So I put in a few things that I really wanted to paint, including this blind contour sketch I did before, which I really like the structure of. It gives off really interesting energy. I can't really explain it, but I wanted to include that. This is what I started with, but then I just kept adding other things. I thought there should be another fish, eyes, more fish, a different background, a hand, another face. This is really just what the creative process looks like. I was told that you should put the dark and desaturated colors down first really thin and then build up brighter, thicker layers. I follow this idea and it definitely feels more dynamic and interesting. I honestly enjoyed this process so much because there was really no wrong answer and I loved painting everything on this image. I feel like this is an accurate representation of what's going on inside my head. I think this one took the longest time just because there were so many things happening. I started off kind of more tight and doing a lot of details. Afterwards, I started being more loose and adding freer brushstrokes. I like the overall vibe of this one. It's interesting to look at and the colors work well together. I especially like the flowers because they have a strong shape but also some more impressionistic elements. If I were to do this again, however, I would plan out the layout better and make each element interact with the others more. After exploring this more abstract style, it was interesting, but I'm not sure if it's something I want to do a lot more of in the future. I enjoyed it, but I might make it less ambiguous and approach it with a story or a message. I feel like for portfolios, other than wanting to get into a good art school, it's a good reason for you to try out different things and actually practice your art skills. It does make you go a little crazy, but that's what makes it fun. If you have applications and portfolios to make as well, I wish you the best of luck. We can do it. Also, give me critiques in the comments. I need it.